It's interesting, and but I have to say I think it's optional for the AI leader, unless if you're a Google shop and you're completely Google, then this is probably important. It's really a lot of support infrastructure and some agent technology. It's good. It seems good, but it's just a big product announcement, which there are going to be a lot of this week because Google's having their thing, as we see when Microsoft and Amazon similarly had their big weeks of developer and product launches, conferences. So it's a big deal from that perspective. But honestly, there's nothing really super exciting in here. It's just a lot of stuff that will be helpful, I'm sure, in creating agents and rolling them out. Mostly on the infrastructure side. A lot of this has already existed. They did add a few new products, but there isn't anything about usage in them or adoption. There's a couple of quotes, but nothing significant. So this is early days. It's a product announcement. I would give it an optional.
Okay. Optional rating. Do you agree, Vinay?
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think, in fact, it's kind of a little bit late to the game for Google with an agent platform. If you look at what Gemini was capable of doing, and you try to use Gemini versus ChatGPT for custom agents, it was solely underfunctioned. With the agent space, I feel like they've caught up a little bit. And Tim said, if you're a Google shop, it's an important step forward. But like everything from Google, it's tough to sort of standardize your enterprise on their technology and their software layer, because they sometimes don't commit as much time to it on the enterprise side. So it's just good to know that's going on, but I'd be wary about doing a lot of stuff with it.
I see.
Yeah, it's a good point too. This is a lot of catch-up stuff. Most
Yeah.
other vendors have this already.
Vinay, could you come a little closer to the microphone when you
Oh,
speak?
sure. Sorry
That
about
would
that.
be great. Yeah. John, do you agree? Optional.
Actually, I was leaning to more important, or I don't know, maybe even essential. When a major vendor, it did come out in December, so I guess that's old news in that sense. Not a lot of new news here, but major vendor, there's a lot of, if you go in there, agent marketplace, you get a fair amount of agents in there being, being promoted by everybody from Wipro and Deloitte to hardware providers, HCL software and so forth. I don't know. I can live with optional. I thought of it more as important.
Okay. So we have several articles. So maybe since it was introduced earlier, and it's nothing really new in this particular article, maybe we rate it as optional. But out of the 17 articles, maybe we should put this up after the couple of articles we review, and mark one as essential or important, because there's quite a number of interesting news in the 17. So, okay, well, let's rate this optional and proceed. And maybe the next one will be more important in that sense. Ankash?
Yes, Luda. So the next one again from Google, and it talks about Ironwood, their first DPU for inference.
Right. What did you think about this, Vinay? This is the hardware ploy from Google.
This is going to turn into the Google show. So I think this is important to read. And in fact, to the earlier point, I think this is where Google shines at core infrastructure. This is the stuff they know how to do really, really well. I think for most of us who are sort of on the configuration and usage side of AI, this is an interesting read. It's not going to dramatically change what we do today. But if you're in the business of building software based upon AI, and you're doing that in Google Cloud, this is going to be an important step forward, because this increases the capabilities of what you're able to do with GCP. I thought it was interesting just to see how there's so much progress to be done at different layers of the infrastructure stack when it comes to AI. We tend to look at model performance and benchmarking models, and Facebook came out with some new models a couple of days ago. But there's so many other layers of the stack that are seeing so much progress as well. And some of that progress can have a multitude of impact on AI capabilities. And I think that was just, for me, an important takeaway after reading this article. Again, if you're really into sort of chips and infrastructure, this is a very important read. If you're on the user side, it's nice to know, and it's nice to know that things are getting better and better at that layer.
Yeah, the amount of power that this allows is incredible. It's more than a supercomputer when you pull them together. It's just amazing. So I actually thought it was important. But I'll come back to you, John, and Tim in a second. But Ankash, if you scroll down in this article, I think there is a little insert to the link with 17 articles that I mentioned. I think it's here. Huh? No? Yes, it's here. It's about before powering the age of inference with Ironwood. It's close to the beginning. Yeah. So if you click on that, maybe we could come to several. So it talks about the major introductions. This is one of them. The previous one we talked about is one of them. If you scroll down, there are like little icons on all of the announcements, or all of the upgrades that they've done. One of the interesting ones is actually at the very end. They introduce A2A infrastructure for agents. And that is a platform on top of MCP protocol that we talked about yesterday and marked it as essential. So this is an advance of the MCP that's becoming a standard. So to make agents distributed, secure, and interoperable, and also localized, right? So I was really excited about this one. Maybe we dive into this next time or tomorrow. But this is a pretty comprehensive way of Google putting together a slew of various advancements that I think is important. So maybe to add to your important in there on this article is other things that they're putting in the stack from hardware up to say, look, this is worth a note for sure, if not essential. So now, John, what did you think?
I was going to do the TPU thing important. I think the agent-to-agent thing is essential. Obviously, the Google's focused heavily on inference with the Ironwood stuff, and that's where the action's been for the past 18 months or so, in terms of the differential improvement. So yeah, I think at least important. And to your point, I think we should separate out the A to A protocol stuff. But
do it tomorrow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's amazing to me is just how deeply it's like back when when they were first creating the first list machines and things like that. The providers are actually getting down into the hardware in a deep way and having lots of competition, which I think is a great thing.
Yeah.
And I agree with Lucinda. It's amazing how many partners they've been working with. And not for now, but we probably should have a learning lab on how different IT leaders need to commit to, or not need to consider which environments they're going to get their folks up to speed on. So Vertex, Bedrock, so forth.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So Tim, we are rating this particular one important. What do you think?
Yeah, I give it an important. I mostly just because it's good for people to read about the hardware advances every once in a while, and the pretty good advances. I mean, they're getting an enormous improvement in compute power at half energy, which is, to me, the single most important thing is they cut the energy costs in half. So again, for Google people, it's especially important, but you have to remember there's still a tiny fraction of the chip market. They do it for themselves. They install them in their own hyperscaler environments. It's not clear to me. I did a little bit of research and asked the robots, how does this compare to the Blackwell? Not that favorably, actually. So when you look at Blackwell clusters, they're at least as powerful, quite energy efficient, faster interconnects, and a little bit cheaper. Other than that, it's all the same. and of course, NVIDIA has the software stack. If you're going to use TPUs, you have to use Google's software stack. So there's a whole lot of issues in terms of market penetration. But the Google people will make use of it, and it's good to see the competition. And if it really at some point, at least it's competitive with the high-end NVIDIAs, so it's an option for people. But there's a cost to using these other environments. So Google will use if they use it for their partners, and Anthropic's a big partner of theirs. But I wouldn't expect big shifts in market as a result of this.
Yeah, no, because Google will have to crawl their way into enterprise that they are doing actually quite successfully, but they're a small share for sure. Okay, important it is. Let's proceed, Ankaj.
Okay, the next one that we have for today again comes from Google, and it's about the updates on Vertex AI.
Right. John, what did
Yeah,
you
I was going to give this an essential. I mean, this is Vertex AI has now got it's as they claim, and I think they're right, that it's the only environment that has all the different modalities of models. So if you want to do voice, it's easy. You go to video, text, and over time we'll be adding other kinds of modalities, whether it's chemistry or materials and so forth. But I think that like a major vendor here, I know is their week, their conference week. Hence, we're getting all these announcements. But I think this notion of going to it reminds me of when the integrated software packages came out in the personal computer. We had word processors plus spreadsheets plus PowerPoint, that kind of thing. So I think the ability to commit to an environment is going to be a big deal both for end users and for IT departments. So I was going to give it an essential.
Okay. Vinay, what's your thoughts here?
I think it's essential, and it was sort of a little bit reminding me of the Steve Jobs next to Pixar thing that happened. If you look at that story, it was all about a single entrepreneur having a technology vision that totally transformed the movie industry, right? And in this case, we're looking at a widely available, ubiquitous technology company building the core infrastructure that's totally going to change the entertainment industry. The difference being that in the next to Pixar case, it was a pretty proprietary jump into the market, right? Where Pixar had a tremendous leading advantage when it came to the production quality and what they were able to do. And then it took, a decade or two for everybody to catch up. This is totally different. This is like saying now everybody can produce high quality entertainment out of their own imagination. So I think it's just really fascinating that you see Google doing chips, you see them doing software layers, and then you see them disrupting markets like this. And I just thought it's just an interesting sort of thing that's happening. I'm glad I'm not in the entertainment industry and in the production industry. I'd be either excited or freaked out, but I think this stuff is really, really cool to see.
Okay, Tim, with your critical hat on, do you agree with essential?
I wouldn't, but I give it an important. It's again, it's a product announcement. I have a lot of trouble getting super excited about product announcements, and it's a sort of a catch-up for the most part. Yes, it's integrated at a certain level, especially for developers, but it's not the top in any particular category. The voice is better, I think, at Sesame and even at OpenAI. Luna, Runway have better video. So they're catching up, and they're all starting to be pretty close to each other in performance, and Google being such a large provider and having so much distribution, that's an advantage, especially if you're a Google shop. But there's nothing over the top here in terms of better performance than has already been available in the industry, other than that it's all in one platform, and that's important.
Yeah. Okay. I will go with essential, Tim, because we need, I think if you step back from these three articles and actually look at what Google has achieved, what they have on the platform, from hardware to all these for the agent environments and the like, with the now music generating from text, it's amazing. So it's starting to look like a comprehensive platform, and I think that we need to grant it to them. So at least one of the articles I think should be essential. So this one. Okay, let's proceed. Essential it is. Let's proceed, Ankash.
Next one is a case study from VentureBeat, which talks about Wells Fargo's AI assistant.
Yeah, Vinay, it's a use case. What did you think about this one?
So I think this is totally essential. If you're on the usage side, if you're doing anything to do with AI and the customer service layer, this was a really, really fascinating read. Just the sophistication that Wells Fargo has taken here to set up as they talked about, a poly model, poly infrastructure kind of platform to do this. It's a little bit, it gets into like, okay, this is a Google announcement as well, because it's obviously very bullish on Gemini. But at the same time, though, there's so many interesting things in here that they're doing that I thought was really fascinating. So, kudos to the Wells Fargo team for making this happen. And I think at the end of the day, it's another reminder that some companies are very much leading in. I'd love to see the business case around this. This was very technical orientated, but I'd love to see how the CFO of Wells Fargo looks at this initiative, or even at least the CIO, and how they quantify the investment and what it's coming back to in the company in savings. But if you are a big enterprise and you've been somewhat sitting on the fence, this should convince you that you got to be doing something.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's too bad they didn't really go into the detail of avoiding hallucinations. So people are very scary to unleash the bots on the conversational interface with customers. So Wells Fargo is doing that, but they have figured out how to reduce hallucinations quite dramatically, and the article specifically mentions that, but no detail.
Yeah.
John, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was essential as well. Vinay, I did a model for one of our clients if you take the fully loaded cost of a call center operator in the United States, it's about $75,000, and minimum, and you can buy a lot of tokens for that. So I think the kind of numbers at the top level, even if you make massive assumptions about token consumption and so forth, and amortization of the actual creation of the agents and such, with very, very small differences in labor productivity in a big call center, the ROI is massive. It's like 1 to 5% productivity would swamp even a big development budget. So it's
I totally agree. I think that the thing that I would love to you guys made, you've read all the articles, you'd love to see the same sort of level of company and depth of engagement and usage of AI in a non-call center scenario within the enterprise with this kind of progress. Like I think things get a little bit harder and more challenging in those cases, but I think that we're starting to see the pillars around customer service and some maybe back office operations brought down, but when you get into the middle management and consulting and sales and marketing in those areas, I think seeing similar sort of progress there would be amazing. We're obviously trying to do a lot of that at One Digital as well.
Yeah. I think a lot of the challenge is going to be the measurement of output, because in complex attribution, and I did a lot of work to really. My thesis work was actually on taking the intervention of technology and trying to really attribute it to an outcome. And most of the time, when you get out of places like call centers, like when you say, sales, for example, if you have a complex sale and you got more than 2 or 3 people involved, attribution of productivity to the technology can be challenging. We can do it, but it took me a couple of years I can tell you about to actually come up with a design where you could do that. And then to do a field experiment longitudinally with 4 different financial services companies, and it's hard.
Yeah, it is hard. Okay, so we need to proceed. Tim, okay with essential?
I absolutely agree. This one is essential. As stated, I wish they had given more ROI data, but I'm with John. It's clear there's a big ROI here. It's really, you got to be building your own models, but it shows you the power of building your own models. And there's clearly a market opportunity for creating a sort of what we call a partial solution here that does a lot of this heavy lifting for small and medium-sized businesses. It would let them have this kind of full range of model selection, and in particular, the use of this filtering before and after using the models. It's a really big deal to protect privacy and I think make organizations more comfortable.
Yeah. Okay. Essential it is. Let's proceed, Ankash. But before you do, Ashish mentioned that essential piece of the Google announcements is the A2A protocol. So let's review it tomorrow in more detail.
And for our listeners, I just put in the chat the article that does the productivity analysis I mentioned, which I published in Slow Management Review some time ago.
Thanks, John. That's great. All right, tremendous. Let's proceed, Ankash.
Sure, Luda. So the next one comes from Amazon, and they have launched Amazon Nova Sonic, which is a speech-to-speech model.
Yeah, an announcement from Amazon and a slew of announcements from Google. Tim, what did you think?
I thought this was pretty darn interesting. This was, again, I probably have to say important, maybe even optional, because it's very specific. I believe it's kind of more developer oriented. No, it's more of a product announcement. There wasn't a lot of customer usage yet, but it was really pretty interesting what they've done here. And again, the quality really counts. They claim a lot of quality. It sounds okay when you listen to it, but you got to get it out there and get some real traction in the marketplace before you really know. But it was really pretty interesting what they could do in terms of assessing sentiment. If you're attaching this to a call center as an automated agent, just some really interesting stuff. So I was sort of leaning towards important. Again, I have a bias against product announcements, and this is yet another product announcement with no data on who's using it, how much, and what they're getting out of it. So that makes me a little skeptical yet, but I really liked what I saw here and some really, really interesting capabilities. So I could definitely give this an important.
Okay. Vinay, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. It was, it's definitely sort of fascinating. I sometimes think Amazon is very sort of under promotes what advances they make when it comes to AI. So it's good to see this being highlighted. I think, yeah, I think it's absolutely important for people to see some of the things that Amazon's doing around their AI investments, including multimodal models like this.
Yeah, I was really very impressed with the fluency of the conversation when the user interrupts the bot and the bot stops and listens and then re-engages like a human would. That was quite fascinating. I haven't seen the bots do that in other platforms. So, John, okay with important?
Yeah, I think the 11 Labs one does a lot of that interruption and stuff like that. But yes, the other thing about Amazon is that Amazon, is going to be such a big way that small businesses, start to compete with larger businesses. Think of the quality of the call center. Your local hairdresser can do now. I mean, it's amazing.
True.
The interruption stuff just about everybody does now. But
really? Okay, I may be not following.
Yep. OpenAI does it. Sesame does it. Yep. They all do. And in fact, Google just announced that they do it as well.
It's
And 11 Labs
I
is the
think
leader in this.
I mean, it's a gradation thing, right? It's how it's done with emotions and the like. So it's a combination of stuff. Yeah. Okay. Let's mark it as important and proceed. Please, Ankaj.
The last one comes from Ellen Labs and talks about going beyond open data, increasing transparency and trust in language models with Olmo Trace.
That was fascinating. Of course, you needed to know the all the training data and have it available, but this is open source and it does a very good job tracing it back. What did you think about this, John? I was impressed. But
Yeah, I was on the border between important and essential. Explainability is such a critical part of this. I've been diving a little bit into different models of explainability, one of our customers, Seeker, has a fantastic platform that allows you to do traceability, of data and, basically weights of evidence against a given, insight and to see what's driving what. I didn't have enough time with it to really understand the nature of the algorithm how it was pulling out what text it was then highlighting. But, this whole notion of, what is driving explainability is just going to continue to be a massive thing. So I gave it at least important, maybe essential. In fact, it's open source, code's available today, the whole routine.
yeah, and it's such a critical area, right, that we haven't really cracked. So this will be very useful. So what did you think about this, Tim?
Yeah, I was on the border myself between important and essential. It's a little geeky, but I think it's important for the reasons John said to a certain extent. This proves you can start to look at explainability. You can do this, and you can keep it open, so it's available to researchers and other people. You can do this, and the only reason they haven't done more is they're just a tiny little research organization. They just don't have as big of models, and they don't have as much money. The algorithm is pretty straightforward. They just basically index all the training data, which is expensive. So that's why these people don't do it. It's not that they can't do it. But when you have trillions of tokens, trying to index and find the data that matches, you have to sample, you have to do some math to try and simplify it a little, because you can't literally search every piece of text and every piece of training data, but they do a pretty good job of surfacing the important bits and finding exact matches. So I think, again, if you look at the hardware advances like we were looking at earlier, I think it will be possible to completely reverse index these things, and then just say, well, here are all the pieces it came from. The question is whether they want to do that. And I think most of the commercial institutions don't, because they don't need to, and it's expensive.
Yeah. Okay, Vinay, important or essential?
I think it's essential for everything that you guys talked about. But I also, if you don't know the organization behind this is Paul Allen's foundation and the work that they're doing. And I think the important takeaway is that as we just had a whole conversation about monster commercially profit orientated companies doing amazing things, that there needs to be the counterbalance of organizations like this that are building the systems to hold the AI in check, to give us the tools as humans to hold the AI in check. And I think that balance is probably out of whack, as you would imagine, because these organizations don't have the funding to battle the bigger guys. But you can imagine there that in a different political climate, you can imagine regulation stepping in and saying that these kinds of technologies need to be bedded into your AI for it to be used.
Yeah.
And traceability, security, privacy, all of those things are so important. And it's good to see some standards being developed, or at least the beginnings of some standards being developed in that area.
Okay, wonderful. Essential it is. Kash, if you can give us the scorecard. We're running a little bit over the hour, but we have quite a day today. It seems like we have 3 essentials, 2 importance, and 1 optional. And we'll review the Google A2A protocol tomorrow. Right? Yeah, that's correct. Any news announcements? Anything, Paul? Oh, I'm sorry, John, Tim?
Yeah, just super excited about our participation in the MIT Imagination in Action event, which will be next Tuesday. at the MIT Media Lab. Paul and I are both going to be on presenting some things, and just a fantastic thing as John Warner normally does. So anybody who is coming, hope to see you there.
I'll be there.
Thank you. Vinay, thanks for joining. Thanks for your comments. Much appreciated. Tim, thank you. And we'll see you tomorrow.